So welcome, everyone. This is a panel that we're doing, and we've nicknamed it Economics is Not Boring, because we met to talk about this, and we've decided that economics is actually rather cool. And we're very excited that you're all here to hear these great presentations. And so I'm Jan Haskings-Winner. I'm on the OHASSTA executive. And so I'm kind of like the panel chair kind of stuff, right? So what we have here today is three presenters, and we're going to have a place for questions at the end, but we're going to start with a poll. So Erin, if you could put the poll in the chat, there it is. And if everybody could work on those, there's 5 questions. And we're going to go from there. And I'll start to introduce our speakers as you're working on the questions, just to let you know. And I'm going to introduce all 3 of them right now to give you a sense of who we have here. So we have Julie Hauser, who's a Senior Engagement and Outreach Officer at the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And Julie works with her colleagues in the FCAC to engage and collaborate with stakeholder groups from private, public, nonprofit sectors and strengthen financial literacy of individuals and families. Julie participated in cross-country virtual consultations that led to development of the first financial literacy strategy and the renewed national financial literacy strategy. And this gave her insight into needs of vulnerable populations. It's been in collaboration and practices and things like that. So she's had several positions in this agency. And I want to just get to, she has a Bachelor of Journalism and a political science degree, but she brought a pandemic puppy into her family because that means she has to go outdoors to walk the dog. Heather is the Education and Evaluation Specialist at the Bank of Canada Museum. She's been there for 3 years, and she develops online resources, school programs, exhibits, and education projects. Previous, she was at the Canadian Museum of History and the Diefenbunker. I've been there. Canada's Cold War Museum. She has a Bachelor of Journalism from Carleton, Master's in Archaeology from Newcastle, and a graduate professional certificate in Cultural Heritage Studies from the University of Victoria. Her best financial decision she's made is how to make her own bread. And Chris Lee is the Assistant Director of the Consumer Prices Program at Statistics Canada. She believes in the importance of understanding data. She graduated from the University of Simon Fraser in economics and invested most of her career in delivering timely, relevant information to Canadians. She's worked on producing both social and economic statistics, and she's published articles on financial impact for widows and widowers. Canada's private colleges overqualification of university graduates. However, the past decade, she spent most of her time on the price expert, producing indicators for producers and consumers. She's moved from pumping gas at a gas station to as her first job to measuring gas prices for a consumer price index. So there's a little bit of our 3 presenters here. And let me see, have our people put in their survey results yet? Oh, yes, I'm getting results here. So we have people from, okay. Oh, wow. We have people from Ontario, we have people from Manitoba, and we have people from Alberta. So we're well represented here. What do you teach? Oh, economics is most of them. Some do careers and some do other, which makes sense, I guess, right? So the poll questions, I think you get the answers if you got it right or not, so you would be aware of that kind of stuff, right? Although question 1, you all got it right. Question 2, not quite all of you, and question 3, not quite all of you. If we have time at the end, I'll share I'll share my screen and give you the actual poll results, but I want to welcome everybody to this. And because of our tight timelines, I want to start us off with Julie.
Thank you. I think I'm having trouble again with my screen. So if somebody else could start with my slides, I'd really appreciate it.
Did I get your slides? I don't know if I got your
I
slides.
did, and Heather has them too.
Okay. Heather, can you do it? Is that possible?
Yeah, I'm just waiting for it to load. So if you want to start, Julie, then
Yeah,
just explain what you-
I'll just start briefly. There will be
Yeah.
a slide in a minute. I apologize. I don't do presentations on Zoom usually. I'm guessing a lot of you probably are not familiar with the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. We are a federal agency. We're a separate operating agency, and we were set up just almost 20 years ago. Our anniversary is this 20th anniversary is this Sunday. So our role is we are a financial regulator. We oversee the federally regulated financial institutions, a bit of a mouthful, and in terms of the information that they provide to consumers. We also have a mandate to provide consumers with education about financial products and services. So basic information: what's a loan, what's a credit card, what is a mortgage. And then we also have other information beyond that that touches on things like comparing the best credit card for you, because what might be good for me is not necessarily good for you. So we've got a lot of different tools and information. Thanks, Heather. So I think we probably don't need the first slide anymore. And there's a little bit more about the agency. As I mentioned, we are mandated to protect financial consumers. We're independent regulator, but we are part of the federal government. We educate consumers about their rights and responsibilities when dealing with financial institutions, and we collaborate with organizations and we provide resources and tools to help consumers make informed financial decisions and strengthen their financial well-being. So that, in a nutshell, is what the agency is. And if you could move the next one, please, Heather. Thank you. That's our vision and mission. And basically, I think I've covered all that, and I'm happy to answer any questions about it afterwards. So to the next one, please. And as I mentioned, we have the consumer education and financial literacy is part of our mandate. So strengthen Canadians' financial awareness, skills, attitudes, and behaviors. That's the sort of what financial literacy is. We provide online content, tools, and programs that help educate Canadians so they can make informed financial decisions and ensure that Canadians are aware of their rights and responsibilities. Sorry, there was a bit of duplication there. So that's one part of our mandate. And the next slide. And then again, as I mentioned, there's some of the tools and calculators. I'll mention first, because it's something you might want to use with your students. We have this budget planner, and it's a very cool tool because it was built with some behavioral design and nudging portions to it. So it's not just a budget. It also sort of lets you compare yourself to others. It's all anonymous, and you can save it and go back and work on it, but it's got features like some badges and other elements that help you sort of compete against others if you want to get a sense of what other people your age are doing or saving. Another one that is helpful for students particularly is the bank account selector tool. Some of them might have accounts that were open for them, or they opened when they were very young. They might find they want to switch accounts. Hard to say, especially when they get to post-secondary. But I know, for instance, when my daughters went to university, one of them, because the closest bank, when she did actually need to go into a branch, the closest one was on campus. So she ended up having to open an account there as well. And so that could be a situation that others are in. And then some of the other ones are tools that are probably more suited to adults, like when you're looking for mortgage information and calculating how much you can pay. Credit card selector tool would actually be another good one for students because of the fees that can apply to some cards, and chances are students would be looking for a low fee credit card, so that would help them find it. And all our tools and resources are free. They're unbiased. They're in English and in French. And you know, they will link, you know, the comparison is done on FCAC's site, and then they will link to the financial institution that you select when you want to compare the tools. Next slide, please. And again, I just give as an overview some of the resources and programs that we have for teachers and students. As I mentioned, we've got a lot of information, and I know there's more coming from both Heather and Chris. So the financial basics has the e-learning videos as well. So if you want to break it up a little bit, not just, there are workbooks, and there's a handbook for the students, there's workbooks for the presenter, and then there are e-learning videos that supplement it. There's also a workshop on understanding your credit report and score, and that's something that's becoming particularly important, I would say, for students, just because now credit reports are often being used for landlords will sometimes use them. They'll check a student's credit rating before they rent to them, or even their parents' credit rating. And sometimes employers use them as well. So it's really important to understand what that is. And so there is, if you as a teacher would like to teach about it, it's about a 40-minute workshop, sort of everything there that you would need, slides, and some workbooks and things. So, and again, en anglais et en français. And then there's a webinar, It's Your Money, Make It Count. That is a sort of budgeting type presentation. Our consumer education materials, these are just some of them, budgeting for student life, student lines of credit, working to pay for your education. There's paying back student debt. There's also some information on funding your post-secondary education or your education. And then we have life events, teaching children about money, starting your first job, renting your first apartment or house. And again, that's just a selection of some of them. There's a lot more. Et puis, la prochaine, Heather, est en français. Comme je vous ai dit, toutes nos ressources sont disponibles en français et voici tous les noms en français. C'est tout simplement, si vous voulez trouver l'information dans les deux langues, c'est tout pareil. Et c'est comme en anglais, c'est tout gratuit. Et c'est disponible et vous pouvez faire un download si vous voulez avoir les cahiers d'information. Et puis, the next slide, please. And then the other big thing that I spent a lot of time working on is Financial Literacy Month, which starts November 1st. Our theme this year is Make Change That Counts. We're doing a launch event on November 1st that's open to everybody. It'll be virtual. Everyone is welcome to join. The goal of Financial Literacy Month is help Canadians build their financial resilience in an increasingly digital world. And again, that's another thing that we have a lot of information on, and you can see the infographic we've developed. If you want to use any of these images, you're welcome to. And I think there's
you have 1 minute left.
Okay, so I think there's just a couple more slides. This is information on finding our FCAC website, including all our social media sites. YouTube, we have a lot of great videos, some of them very short, that explain financial concepts. So, you know, what is a credit card? What is a budget? Why is a credit report important to know about, that kind of thing? And then I think there's just one more, Heather, and that's just where you can send an email for questions. And that is the end of my presentation. And again, apologies for the display issues. Thank you, merci.
All right, and next we have Heather. Yes.
Yes, it is me next. Let me just make sure I can share my presentation too. Okay, share screen. All good, all good. Okay, so I would actually like to start by just saying that Ottawa, where Julie and Chris and I are located, is the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people, and that we pay our respect to Indigenous peoples across the country and to their ancestors for their immeasurable contributions to our country. So as Jan mentioned, I'm from the Bank of Canada Museum. We're a little museum that you may not know very well, but we are a part of the Bank of Canada, Canada's central bank. And just want to make sure I can actually share. Here we go. I can't really see the chat too well. Maybe I can bring it up here. Oh, here we go. I'm just curious if anyone can tell me if they know any of the core functions of the Bank of Canada. This is your little quiz if you want to answer in the chat.
There are some economics teachers in this group, so you think they might know some of this.
So you better know. No, it's fine. I will clarify if you don't know. Now I have to awkwardly wait for everyone to answer.
They might be shy, Heather, right? So
okay, let me tell you about the functions of the Bank of Canada, which I'm sure you all already know. Interest rates is a good one. Yes, it is monetary policy, the part of interest rates. Let's just go to that. So we used to have 4 functions. I'm going to tell you about the 5th one in a second. So our first function is monetary policy. So we use our interest rate to target low and stable inflation. That's our current monetary policy. We also monitor the financial system. So we are the lender of last resort for big banks and are able to provide liquidity in the economic system. Currency is another function. So we design and issue all Canada's banknotes. Funds management is the 4th function. And so we're the fiscal agent. We basically hold the government's bank account as well as some other bank accounts. And then our 5th function is brand new this year. We've been given the function of retail payment supervision. So if you're an economics teacher, you might already be aware of the retail payment supervision function that we were just given this year. There is going to be some resources coming out from us about how that function works and what we'll be doing about that in the future. So keep an eye out if you're thinking you might have a hard time explaining what that is. All right. So the Bank of Canada Museum is kind of the educational branch of the Bank of Canada. So we're part of the communications department at the Bank of Canada. We have a physical museum in Ottawa that you can come and visit. We've been closed since March of 2020, but hopefully we'll be reopening in the new year. But why do we care about education at the Bank of Canada? In our mind, informed consumers are a vital part of a healthy economy. So because we are focused on keeping the economy healthy and keeping inflation low and stable, we think that educating consumers about how the economy works is a fundamental part of what we do. And this means financial education, economic literacy, financial literacy. It's really essential to making sure that people understand what it is that we're doing. So this is a picture of our beautiful museum that's been closed for a bit, but if you're ever in Ottawa, if you want to come see us, it's always free, so come take a visit. But I'm going to talk to you today mostly about our online resources. Comme je l'ai dit, tous nos réseaux sont disponibles aussi en français. Also, if you have any questions, si vous avez des questions en français à la fin, je peux les recevoir en français aussi. But I'll show you here our website. So you can find all these resources on bankofcanadamuseum.ca/learn. We have lesson plans, video discussion guides, activities, school programs, and an education blog. So let me tell you a bit about some of the resources we have. I'm going to go quickly through the elementary resources because I'm pretty sure most of the teachers here are high school teachers, but if you have any questions about elementary resources in specific, then please come visit me at our exhibitors booth and I'll walk you through them and what might be useful for you. But in the elementary grades, we mostly focus on financial literacy concepts and some basic trade concepts and basic ideas of what currency is. But I'll be a little bit more specific about our middle and high school resources. So we have this lesson plan called Money, Past, Present, and Future, which kind of talks about the evolution of what is money, how money came to be, what are the characteristics of money. So we have links in social studies, history, and economics curricula for those. We have 2 lesson plans on banknotes. So we use the banknotes as a way to look at historical significance and historical thinking concepts. because choosing who to be on a banknote is a really interesting process of deciding significance for all of Canada, really. And the idea that now the public is choosing people who to be on our banknotes. Viola Desmond was the first woman to be chosen to be by the public to be on a banknote. And we actually, you may have heard, are about to redesign our $5 banknote as well with the same process. So we take a look at banknotes through the lens of historical thinking. So if you're a social studies or history teacher, you might want to check those out. We also have some lesson plans that are a little bit more focused on economics curriculum. So trading up is about specialization, opportunity cost, and comparative advantage. This is more for a high school economics course, but it's got a really interesting video that you can see about specialization and a few little games you can play with your class to really focus on why specialization is important and why global trade is important. Price Check Inflation in Canada is a lesson plan about inflation and the CPI. And so it actually has some links to our friends at StatScan, to their resources and their videos. And it talks about why we monitor the CPI and kind of how it affects our monetary policy. And also we have students design their own student price index to understand why a basket of goods would be important to tracking how the economy is doing. We also have a resource called the Fraud Prevention Kit, which focuses on the security features of banknotes. This is a whole kit with multiple lesson plans that you can take a look at. It's actually, we're in the process of redesigning this, so go take a look at it, but know that in the next couple of years, there'll be a brand new one with the same idea. We also have some really interesting resources for explaining parts of the economy, either to your students or to you. So we find that a lot of teachers who don't have a background in economics find it really intimidating to talk about the economy at all. So we provide some resources that will help you better understand the concepts that we're talking about. And the Economy Plain and Simple is a really great resource with
1 minute, Heather.
That explains parts of the economy. We have an educator's blog that sort of gives you an overview of some interesting topics like video games in the economy and teaching the economy during COVID-19. We have explainers on the bank's website, which will explain any of these difficult concepts like quantitative easing and seniorage to you and your students if you're interested. We also have virtual programs. So for elementary, we have All About Money, and for high school, we can bring economists into your classroom to speak to your students. We have a lot more coming. We're putting up a new high school lesson unit with 3 modules and lesson plans that will be in early next year, and always more lesson plans and virtual programs coming. So please keep an eye out and sign up for our newsletter if you can. And there's my contact information. We're always looking for teachers to join us as advisors and to look over new resources we have. I'm always happy to answer any questions, so please reach out to us at any time. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you very much, Heather. That was awesome. I will volunteer to be an advisor, actually. Okay, so now it's our last presenter here. Technology here to work. And it's Chris. Right. Floor is yours, Chris. You're on mute, though.
Chris, you're muted.
It's so pandemic.
I'm trying to get my screen to share. I had it earlier, so I'm trying to see what's going on. Okay, can you see my slide? This slide?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
Perfect. Thank you. Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, perfect. So I'm representing Statistics Canada on the panel. As most of you know, Statistics Canada is mandated to produce statistics that help Canadians better understand their country, its population, resources, economy, society, and culture. Some of the key economic indicators that you probably have heard on the news include the unemployment rate, the gross domestic product, which is GDP. It's a way to measure the size and growth of the economy, and the consumer price index, the official measure of inflation. So if you haven't already done so, I encourage you to sign up to like MyStatCan, which is a customizable one-stop portal that allows you to bookmark and quickly access your favorite articles, reports, data tables, and indicators, and more. You can receive email notifications on our latest data releases and participate in an online discussion on the StatCan blog and chat with an expert. On the right is a list of all the subjects that we produce statistical information on. So as you know, I'm here to represent the Consumer Price Index. The CPI is one of the widely known and cited and used economic indicators in Canada. The CPI tracks changes in prices experienced by Canadians by comparing through time the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services. It provides insight into overall economic conditions of inflation, as the CPI is made up of both consumer expenditure weights and prices. So you're probably wondering why the CPI is important. It's most because some private and public pension programs are tied to inflation, which is adjusted on the CPI. Income tax deductions, wages, and some government social payments are also adjusted using the CPI. As Heather mentioned, the Bank of Canada uses the CPI and some special aggregates of the CPI as a tool for setting and monitoring economic policy. The bank uses the supply of money circulating in the economy using its monetary policy framework to keep inflation low and stable, as Heather mentioned. This is important because we don't want inflation to be super high, because that would mean your money can't buy as much as it used to, and the loss of this purchasing power hurts everyone's standard of living. And on the other hand, a persistent decline in the level of prices can also have a negative impact on the economy, which could lead to lower production and wages. Therefore, the low and stable, predictable inflation is good for the economy and for your finances. It helps money keep its value and make it easier for everyone to plan how, where, and when to spend. Canadians can use the CPI to make personal financial decisions about budget planning. So to measure inflation, we look at the CPI and see how quickly it is rising, comparing through time the cost of a fixed basket of goods and services purchased by consumers in a particular year. So for example, in 2019, if the basket cost $100 and in 2020 it cost $102, what would the average inflation rate be? You can enter that into the chat if you'd like. And before I answer that question, I'll just say that the CPI is reflective of pure price change, since the CPI basket contains products and services of unchanging quantity and quality. So the answer would be the annual average inflation rate would be 2%. So for reasons mentioned earlier, why it's important, it's also important that the CPI maintains its accuracy and relevance. Since the CPI is made up of both weights and prices, both are critical in the accuracy and relevance of the CPI. The CPI basket represents average expenditures and used to determine the relative importance of various goods and services in the fixed basket. The goods and services in the CPI basket are divided into 8 major components. First and foremost, the largest component is shelter. So 30% of our budget goes to shelter. Canadians allocate about 16% to food. 15% of expenditures are allocated to household operations, furnishings, and equipment. Only 4% of spending is allocated to clothing and footwear. Canadians spend about 15% of their budget on transportation, and about 5% of the budget is allocated to health and personal care. And recreation, education, and reading account for 10% of the spending. Last but not least, 5% is allocated to alcoholic beverages, tobacco, and recreational cannabis products. So the CPI is a weighted average of price change of a fixed basket of goods and services based on the expenditures of Canadians in a certain reference period. And typically the spending patterns change slowly and do so in response to shifts in prices, income levels, demographic changes, evolving habits, and availability of new technology. And new products come and services are introduced, and some products become obsolete. So this is important for the basket to be updated regularly to capture the shifts in purchasing patterns, and is critical to ensuring that the CPI reflects the change experienced by Canadians. So prices are collected by various methods. We used to have price collectors go into the stores and scan prices. As part of the modernization, there was an increased reliance, or is an increased reliance, on alternate data. This process was sped up due to the COVID-19 pandemic and public health guidelines. We strongly rely now on retailer scanner transaction data, website price collection, and administrative data sources. Use of alternative data sources in the CPI represent nearly 50% of collected prices. Okay, and here's just a list of specific activities and initiatives that have been planned and ongoing to improve our public awareness and understanding and trust in the relevance and accuracy of the CPI. We are always striving to build partnerships and networks so that we can broaden our reach across the various groups and regions, such as attending the special Teaching History and Social Studies conference.
Chris, you have 1 minute.
Okay. I'm almost there. Okay, so this is our resources, a list of resources in English and French. And I do want to raise to you that we at Statistics Canada, we do have a data literacy training program. So I encourage you to visit there. There's the idea is to, it's a resource for data literacy. So, understanding the basics. I encourage you, there's videos, training programs. And as Julie mentioned, next month is Financial Literacy Month. So we'll have a CPI educational webinar on understanding inflation. I'll go in more depth. And my contact is below, and I do encourage you to reach out to me if there's anything that, we're here to do outreach and be able to be incorporated into Canadians' everyday lesson plans and knowledge of the CPI.
Thank you, Chris. All right, so now we have about 10 minutes or so. So if there are any questions or comments or anything, these will all, I'm sure all of these things will upload it to the OHASSTA website, so you'll be able to access this information and so on, and the awesome resources. And I'm not teaching economics anymore, so I feel like I wish I was, because all these updated resources, right? So does anybody have any questions? Either they can speak to or in the chat, whichever you would prefer to do. And there was quiet. There's over 20 people here. Come on, you guys. Must have a question. Actually, Chris, could you talk about, I used to, when I taught economics, I would talk about how someone would go in a clipboard and take the prices down of the prices at the grocery store and things like that, right? What are they doing how are you doing these alternate methods today? Or does somebody still go in the grocery store?
Exactly, especially with the COVID-19 pandemic, with physical distancing, we were very lucky to be on the way of modernization and using alternate data. So we have been working collaboratively with retailers to get their actual transaction data. So, what people pay at the till. So it includes promotions and discounts. So we get the actual prices now, and we get millions of records on a weekly basis. For the ones that is hard to reach, such as the North, for example, where there's a harder online presence, we use store flyers and websites, and very, very remote areas, we do telephone phone calls at this moment until we can go back into collection. But we've pretty much everything is through the websites. We have what we call APIs, so it goes behind the websites and collects all these prices for us now. We have, for example, airfares. It's an alternative data source that we have that tracks these prices. So it's no more going into the stores, like you said in the past, wanting to, scanning. So we've really modernized our ways for getting the data.
Okay. So Colleen asked, we're just beginning to teach financial literacy, perfect timing. What's the most important thing they need to teach students before they graduate? That's a good question, Colleen. We'll let each of them speak. So I'll let Heather go first, then Julie, then Chris.
I'm going to let Julie go first because it's her thing and I'll add to it.
Okay. All right. Okay. Julie, you go first. And you're on mute, Julie.
Did that work?
Yes.
Okay. Sorry about that. You know what? I would say probably just a basic understanding of the importance of managing your own money. It's your money. So people think, oh, somebody else will take care of it. And realistically, that's probably not the best thing. And the more money that you can save, particularly for post-secondary, but other things too, the less money you have to borrow and pay interest on. And so I think just for financial literacy, somebody I noticed in the chat had put a discussion about wants and needs. Totally agree with that. It's really important because what somebody, it varies on circumstance. And so I think that it's just really a part of your life is managing your money, and just being aware of that is so important. So I'll stop there because I could go on. Heather.
Yeah, I definitely agree with Julie. Understanding where your money goes and budgeting it and really understanding those basic skills is something that I wish I had learned in high school for sure. I think also understanding that the economy is made up of millions of consumers who are making these decisions every day, and that what you do is a part of the broader Canadian economy, and what you see in your daily life is a part of the broader Canadian economy. So we're all connected in this big system, and understanding how that system works is really important to, getting the most out of your finances.
Chris.
Yeah. Yes, I agree. And also I think it's important for them to understand, when to save and when to spend, right? In times of low interest rates, high inflation, and vice versa. So, saving depending on what the interest rates are and inflation rate is, and those kind of budget decisions is important for them to understand.
And I like to add the evils of those, like I'll use Money Mart as the example, but all those kinds of like places where people go to, they think it's a quick solution and it's a long-term not, right? So, and I used to work in inner city Toronto, and they were pervasive. No banks were there, but there were sure a lot of those places kind of stuff, right? And so I think the students just have really informed understanding of what the services are and the consequences of bad decisions, right? So, so there's another question here about a starting point to determine sort of the terms of financial literacy. And I could even answer that one. I like to sometimes do like a little quiz kind of stuff, right? To see what students actually know, like a little sort of minds on kind of activity, right? And knowing that they're not going to know most of it, right? But that's kind of motivating them to kind of want to find out a little bit more kind of stuff, right? So that's
we have on FCC's website, Financial Consumer Agency, we have a financial literacy self-assessment quiz. And so people can do that. And then that gives you an idea of where you might want to learn more, and links you to resources on the agency's website that can provide you with more information. And we have information, you were mentioning the payday loans. We have information on payday loans and the cost of payday loans and alternatives to payday loans. So if that's something somebody's interested in, it's on our website too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and also allocating a budget, right? Because students usually are staying at home, so they forget about the largest component of the budget, which is rent, for example. So that, as you saw in the CPI, it's like 30% of one's budget, right? So having that knowledge of, okay, whatever I'm making, I have to make sure I allocate 30% of that to my living location. So that's always forgotten when people start moving out of the home. They're only used to what they're generally spending. So everything minus the shelter component and household operation component. So that's important to keep in mind also.
I think it's also really important to know, to not assume that students would know anything about financial literacy before they start. Is not something that's often taught in homes. And I meet people all the time in, government workers who don't know anything about financial literacy. And so you can't assume that anybody really would, or even that like your fellow teachers or parents would know anything about financial literacy either. So just kind of starting from the basics.
There's also some misconceptions. Like I heard a story once that somebody thought that the credit on her credit report was being given to her, like almost like a thank you or something. And that it was like, $1,000 that she could spend because it was a credit. And it's like, no, actually, if you spend $1,000, you have to pay it back. So sometimes, just even understanding where people are starting from can be really helpful.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. So, I mean, and I think like everything you do in terms of financial literacy and these things is going to make a difference in kids' lives, because sometimes, as mentioned, they don't learn it at home, and sometimes the parents don't know it, right? So, yes, if parents have the depression experience, then you have some more practical experience that gets passed on in those components. But sometimes it's more of an attitude and not really practical, right? So, I mean, it's a kind of a balance of those kinds of things, right? So,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
we
I
still,
also,
sorry, I was going to say, we still see that money is a bit of a taboo subject, especially in families, that parents don't like to talk to their kids about money, and not even like, their salaries or whatever aside, but they just feel that it's not something that they should be bringing up. So for sure, it makes a difference if they talk about it at school. Sorry, Heather.
I just think it's also important, like you talk about the Great Depression as being an impetus to talk about financial literacy, but we're in an unprecedented economic time right now too. So talking about why and how the economy is doing what it's doing now, the response to COVID, even the 2007 financial crisis, these are all things that students have a little bit more knowledge about, and being able to inform some of the headlines that we see is really helpful for them, just to, they might not know what inflation is. So, a news article about inflation being at 4%, that doesn't mean anything to them, but it probably should.
Yeah. And I'm just looking at our time. We're just about to finish up. Is there any last, actually, I'll just give everybody just one last word, like what's the most important thing you want people to remember about your organization? Chris, I'll let you go first.
All right. So yes, if you have any kind of questions, visit our CPI portal. There's a lot of information there, and feel free to reach out to me at chrislead@statcan.gc.ca if you want any resources. And we all work closely together, Heather, Julie, in our upcoming times.
Julie.
I would say that we have trusted, reliable resources, as do both Heather and Chris. And one thing that I notice a lot is that people often just Google and they don't realize the source of their resources. And so they could be coming from the States, the UK, or Australia, or whatever. And that's not always accurate information for you, because there's a lot of things, the regulations of the Canadian economy are different than other countries. And certainly even sometimes it's provincial. So like education is under the provincial jurisdiction. So too are some of the regulations of things like credit unions or wills and estates, which is more for adults, but certainly post-secondary comes through. So you want to make sure that you're going to the right source for the information, and a reliable, trustworthy source.
Good point. And Heather, quickly.
Yeah, just take a look at our website, bankofcanadamuseum.ca/learn, and please sign up for our newsletter, because we send out a newsletter every 3 or 4 months, and it will tell you all of our new resources. And know that we don't just do the economy, we do social studies, math, everything. So come find us on our website.
Okay, so I want to thank all three of these awesome people for spending their time with OHASSTA and sharing these great resources. And I hope you found at least one thing you can use like next week. Or next month, depending. Well, next month is actually Financial Literacy Month, right? So you could use it in your classrooms that quickly, and in your personal lives as well, when you're thinking about, oh, I need to rethink what I'm doing, kind of stuff, right? Where can I find a good source, kind of stuff, right? So, and we are in, quote, unprecedented times as we live through this pandemic and all the world is changing around it. So how can we be slightly more informed on that kind of stuff, right? So, all right, so thank you to Jeff, our tech support person, and our great team for making this happen. And I hope you get to see lots of other OHASSTA things. It has been recorded and it will be on the OHASSTA website shortly. And all the resources from our presenters will also be on the OHASSTA website in case you didn't write everything down as quickly as you might have wanted to, which I would not be surprised you did not, right? So it will be available for you after the fact. And thank you also for those who shared those excellent questions, because it really helped us, move this forward into a probably more interactive thing. Yes, thank you, Colleen. Okay, and I think we'll call that a wrap. Thanks, Jeff.